and he showed up and he sat down. The guy started playing, and I was just like, oh my God. My brothers and sisters were jumping around the house, dancing, and I was just like in a trance. That day, I'll never forget that day.
This podcast is all about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Very, very cool. So I did read you're from Detroit originally.
Right.
And where does the Latin roots come in? Because from what I read, you're of Irish American parents.
100%. Both my parents are Irish immigrants. It's a weird story. I grew up with 6 brothers and sisters in Detroit, with this passion for piano.
Okay.
My whole life, my parents are like, here we're hardworking immigrants. I don't see it. Music, no, you got to work in this country. What are you talking about?
Right.
What I want to do, the only thing I want to do. So my parents basically said, all right, let's make a deal. The best in the world are in New York, at least in this country. If you can get into some top conservatories there, then maybe we'll talk.
Okay.
And thank God I got into Manhattan School of Music, which is amazing.
Right.
But what they didn't realize is it's in 122nd in Broadway in Morningside Heights in a barrio neighborhood to this day, which is Dominican, Puerto Rican, Colombian. The bachata, the salsa, all this music was emanating from that. And for me, it was like impossible to ignore it. I played Motown in Detroit and lots of blues. And so this was like, oh my God, what is this? There's all this, there's all this piano in it and everything. And my career went, kind of in another direction.
That is crazy. Well, we'll get into that. I want to rewind quite a bit. So you have 6 siblings.
6 siblings.
Okay. And are you the only musician in the family, or do you come from a musical family?
They're all musical. I'm the only one that that pursued it as a career.
Okay.
My grandfather was the bagpipist in the village, where he'd play all the weddings and all the pubs and all that stuff. So definitely music was a huge part of my family growing up.
Okay. And your parents immigrated here from Ireland?
They went either Ireland to Canada, Canada to the U.S.
Okay. And were all of you born in Detroit?
All of us children, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you grew up in Detroit then. And how did you get into piano? What drew you to piano, and how old were you?
I was 6, and my parents loved music, and so my dad bought for a surprise for Christmas a little piano for the kids. 2 days before Christmas, this thing came. Mommy, what's that? Oh, it's a piano. You'll see. And a half an hour later, my dad's best friend was a professional pianist in Detroit, played all over town. And he showed up and he sat down. The guy started playing, and I was just like, oh my God. My brothers and sisters were jumping around the house, dancing, and I was just like in a trance. That day, I'll never forget that day.
And then from that moment on, you wanted to pursue the piano.
That never took a day off.
Okay. So then did you get in lessons, and did your other siblings play at all?
They all played, and to my parents, it was really cool because as much as he said, okay, you got to get a real job, they insisted on music, that we all played piano and something else, at least for a couple of years.
Okay.
So the house was like, my sister Mary was on the violin practicing, my sister Colleen was on the clarinet, my brother was a drummer. So after dinner, it was like a
family band.
Like a music school all over that, it was like crazy.
That is cool. And you stuck with it, obviously. Did you play piano for the school orchestra or bands and all that?
I played everything I could. I also played saxophone. I started playing in groups when I was like 16 in Detroit. And I was mentioning my dad's best friend played professional. He didn't read a note of music. So I studied, obviously. But he's, for me, it was really, he taught me how important it was to be able to follow your ear, and your soul. What's important. You don't really need notes all the time. You can just hear something, and he really taught me to think on my feet and improvise and stuff like that, which is a huge tool.
Sure. But and obviously you can read music, but a lot of people can't. A lot of professional musicians can't read music.
Paul McCartney doesn't read music. Imagine.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's incredible. Oh, yeah. I knew that there were obviously some big artists, but I didn't realize like the top tier artist doesn't read music. That's nuts. I guess you didn't have to if you have like 100 hit songs.
Wow, music, it's like flows out of them.
Sure. Wow. Okay. When did you start playing you talked about playing some gigs in Detroit, like with other musicians. Like, were you fairly young and playing with like older people because you were so talented, or
They
how
were
did that
all
work?
10 years older at least. Yeah, started in the neighborhood band when I was 16. We were the house band at Joy Social Hall on Telegraph Road, and we were playing all kinds of like weddings. And I was like, wow, this is great, man. I get to go in, I can have a rum and coke. No one will know. I can eat wedding cake.
Yeah, there you go.
And get paid for it. It's like, and I play, So that's how I started. Then when I was like 18, I got with the sub bass player who played with Flip Jackson, who was the Temptations musical director
Wow.
for a while. And this guy was like in his mid 40s. I was a kid, but he took me under his wing, and I started playing 6 nights a week with this Motown band. I was the only white guy in the band, and that really kind of expanded my horizons hugely. To play all that Motown stuff and all those different rhythms, and talk about having to think on your feet and improvising and going from one thing to the next. And
sure. Wow. 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 And were you in high school still at this point?
I was a freshman in college. Yeah.
Freshman in college. Where were you going to school?
And I was doing the Michigan State.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you going for a piano?
Yeah, of course I was going for piano, and and I just started playing gigs and gigs again. Then moving to New York. For me, the New York experience really was just a continuation of what I was doing, playing blues and Motown. Yeah, there's tons of percussion in Motown, and obviously in Latin music, the percussion's all over the place.
So when you moved, you graduated from Michigan State, and then what? Pursued a graduate degree from Manhattan School of Music?
Manhattan School of Music, exactly. I did
Okay.
From Manhattan. And again, the neighborhood was, full of Boricua, Puerto Ricans, and all that bachata and the salsa and merengue was just, so my mom started calling me Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because during the day I'd be like, and then at night, playing these Latin clubs and stuff, and just mixing everything around and changing the beat, and just, really, what can I come up with that's different and new and not just, regular, I guess.
Right. So then do you, like, obviously you learned Spanish, and how does, like, you really embraced, right? I mean, you really like immersed yourself in that whole culture, the Latin culture.
Yeah, it just one thing led to another. I went to a Willie Colon concert in New York, Pajito de Rivera from Cuba, and then Grupo Nietzsche from Colombia is a big band in Gran Combo de Puerto Rico. I saw them, and just one thing after another. And the more I got into it, and then I had this crazy idea that, okay, I can, be this gringo that plays Latin music. And
right.
So I moved to LA. I started my Latin band. I was playing all over town, but for like 6 years, I could not get signed. I could not get a record deal.
Oh, wow.
So then I moved to Miami, and then within 1 year, I get signed by a label in LA.
Really? Why did you leave New York to go to Los Angeles?
Just because I had spent a couple of summers out there and playing, and I knew some musicians out there. And I don't know, it just felt right, and it was great. It was a great experience. And I was able, LA was very open to what I was doing. But it's one thing playing in clubs and everything, and it's one thing getting a record deal. So,
So were you releasing, did you have like a record out while you're living in Los Angeles, or?
Yeah, I had an indie record out called Encuentros, which is like meetings of, which I wrote all the songs for, and playing all over town. And then finally, it's just like, it's just been 6 years. These labels were interested, but no one wanted to sign me. So, Miami, this is like 2000, it was starting to, it was huge, it was growing. Ricky Martin was coming out, Marc Anthony from New York, everyone was mixing stuff. And so, then I moved here. And again, after LA ignoring me for 6 years, once I'm in Miami, I get signed in LA.
That's crazy. So because of, you weren't getting the recognition or getting a label, that's why you moved to Miami, just because it's a bigger, Latin scene there?
Yeah, it can completely,
Okay.
And it's funny, Miami's huge, but at the same time, and the perception that while the world perceives it's huge, which it is, but at the same time, it's very hometowny. Everyone knows each other, especially in the music industry. You go to the same meetings, you see the same people and the same concerts and the studio guys. So it was manageable. I actually hooked up with a guy who became my manager. His name is Fernand Martinez, and he was Enrique Iglesias' manager at the time.
Wow.
And Ricky was signed to this label, Fonovisa in LA. And so Fernand's like this Colombian guy. Okay, I can sell that. I can sell. Okay, now you're the gringo que toca you're the American guy that plays Latin music in Miami. You know, and so the perception then in LA is like, oh wow, there's this gringo in Miami. That's amazing. And so that's how I got, that's how I got signed. Crazy.
Wow. Okay. When was the first song, or what was the first song that you had written in Spanish, and was that different than what you had been done prior to that? Like, were you writing lyrics in Spanish always?
Mi Alma Latina was the first song, my Latin soul. That was my first demo. I'd shop all over town there, and everyone's like, no, that's so trite. My Latin soul. Come on, guy. That's been done before. So.
But it was a song that you had written completely in Spanish.
I wrote it completely in Spanish. Yeah. And
how long did it take you to pick up the language?
I started in New York, doing gigs, hey man, I never really studied. But because music helps, it helped obviously enormously.
Okay.
And dating some Latin women helped a lot too,
Sure.
And I'm married to a Colombian now, so.
Okay. So you were able to, just immerse yourself in the culture. And were you always like, up until you got kind of involved in this Latin scene, prior to that, were you writing songs that were in English? And when was that? Is that when you transitioned, when you wrote that first song in Spanish?
My transition was, musically
right.
speaking.
Right.
I was always like mixing. When I got to New York, I saw, so many people were just completely bilingual, flipping from Spanish to English. And that was fascinating to me certain languages are, sometimes Spanish is better to communicate a thought, and sometimes English is better. And so I love the idea, kind of this notion of mixing and matching and, and putting things together. And then in New York, I started, that's right after I graduated, there was this producer called Rick Wake, who was doing a bunch of Sony stuff. And all the Latin stuff. And so it was crazy. I was thinking, because Rick, he's this huge producer. He's in New York. And I was in Miami. I just moved to Miami. And they were flying me up to these Latin sessions, even though like New York, right around the corner. And, but he was so in, so he was in the American side and there was the Latin side. Mm-hmm. No one was really, they were starting the mix, but not like it is now. Mm-hmm. So I'd get flown up to do sessions playing Latin piano. When in New York City, you could have gone in Spanish Harlem and say, okay, there's 3 guys right here. They're amazing.
Right. Wow. Well, so once you get signed to the LA label, how did that change your career?
Well, tons of ways. It was an eye opener. It was great, but you're in Nashville and you think, oh my God, I am signed up. Now I'm I'm
a star.
And so when I was so excited, I flew back to LA, to sign my contract. I walked into Fonovisa and I could see him walking in and people are looking at me, and the woman at the desk is like, and you are, she's probably thinking, who's this white guy, like the new accountant or something? I'm like, no, I'm Arthur Hanlon. Oh, wow, yeah, come on in and sign. But, the first album was called El Piano Y Mujer, the yellow piano.
Okay.
Done with Julio Reyes, which is a multi-Grammy winning producer now. It was his first album, my first album. And, we turned it in, and then we go to this big meeting and everyone's like, well, this is like Chinese to me. There's this LA label because we're mixing stuff.
Yeah, they had no idea.
Yeah. So that was kind of a reality check too. Okay, yes, I am signed, but there's no private jet waiting for me right now yet.
Sure.
Long way from.
Do you tour on the road with that album, or how do you start getting in front of people?
Back then, or you mean now? Or
no, back then when you got signed to the label, it's like, okay, you're gonna put out the Piano Y Mujer, and then you're gonna go on tour. Is that what how did?
In my mind, that was going to happen, but that did not happen because the album did not do well at all.
Okay.
But
you put out 3 records with that first label.
Well, yeah, but then Fonovisa got picked up by Univision Records, and that was a game changer for me.
Oh, okay.
Because then the CEO was Jose Bejar, who was from Miami, from Cuba actually, then Miami, completely bilingual, moved to LA, and he really got me what I was doing. because so he helped me my career along, immensely. And then my
Okay.
third album was La Gorda Linda, which
And
is a
that,
song I wrote, and that song went to #1.
yeah, you had a huge hit on that record.
And so that definitely was the game changer. I was
What was
signed.
it like having that song just kind of take off?
It was weird, Adam. It was like I'm on the plane. I get a call. And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. And then my manager's like, dude, it's #1. It's number. I'm like, what's #1? Like, put it in my bag. He's like, idiot, your song is. I'm like, you're kidding. So
That's crazy. And then at this point, you're playing a lot of shows,
yeah,
like touring
definitely.
quite a bit. Was it like a game changer as far as like crowds and recognition when that song went #1?
Yeah, and exposure. And I'm sure it's the same, in Nashville, there's a lot of festivals, like
Mhm.
the radio hits, and then the eight, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 artists. Uh,
Right.
so I started doing a bunch of that. I played at Madison Square Garden in a show with it, which was like, I couldn't believe it. Uh,
Oh, wow. Especially living in New York. I mean,
Living in New
how,
York and like playing these gigs for $50, and then 8 years later, whatever it was. So that was like mind-boggling to me. I'm very grateful.
I can't even imagine. And then you signed to what, EMI?
And I signed to the EMI for one album, which is we recorded in Spain, and then EMI had their EMI problems, and they went out of business.
Right.
And
But
then
they're a major label.
it
I mean,
was
getting signed, yeah,
oh
getting signed to a major label, that must have been a huge step in your
yeah.
career
At
as
this point,
well.
all the executives, if there's Warner, there's Universal, Sony, of course. There's like 5 or 6 of them at the time. At that point, okay, this guy's different. What can we do? This is this could be cool. And so then after that, I signed with Universal.
Mhm.
Actually, yeah, I think Universal took over EMI's catalog, and then I did that. And my first album with them was called Encanto del Caribe, which is turned out to be a PBS special as well, a television special. Because I really
Wow.
wanted to mix, again, mix and match. So I had this idea, because PBS loves that kind of, world stuff,
Hmm.
and so we pitched the idea. They loved it. I called people that I'd started working with a lot, Marc Anthony, Laura Pausini from Italy, Natalia Jiménez from Spain. And we kind of got all created this synergy, and we recorded in a castle in Puerto Rico. We turned it like a giant sound
Whoa.
stage. And it was the first, imagine, it was the first Latin special ever on PBS,
Uh-huh.
Topeka, Kansas, Encanto del Caribe. I thought that was cool.
Sure. That's amazing.
So yeah, and
So
that
you got to record in you said a castle in Puerto Rico?
yeah, San Cristobal Castle. It's actually a national heritage. It was never open before the public for commercial purposes. So I had to go there a bunch of times, and we spoke with the governor and the head of the people that ran it, and said, no, I'm this gringo. I love Latin music, this culture. We're doing something that's amazing for. And they finally just, after saying no, after 3 months, they get, you know what? All right, fine, go for it. And so
Really?
yeah, so
And then what, PBS bring cameras in and like how was it shot?
yeah, we shot with PBS in a company called SBS, a production company. They own radio stations also all over the country. So
Okay.
we created the synergy between Universal, between PBS, between SBS. And yeah, that's exactly what we did. We made a stage from scratch. And there's all these, like castles. It's like a fort. There's Marc Anthony started his song. He's like way up and then walks down the stairs. And then we had this 40-piece band. It was amazing.
Wow. Okay. And from there, you even got to what? You got to work with even other big artists aside from Marc Anthony. You did what, a Gloria Stefan record? Like, was that all at right after that?
Pretty much, yeah, right around the same time or shortly thereafter. Yeah, I went on tour with Laura Pausini, who's Italian superstar.
So, yeah, huge.
Yeah, so we had a great time. She's a dear friend, and yeah, and just because I think what I'm never comfortable with just sitting down. Okay, here's the melody. I play piano. So I like to think, what can I do that's different? What hasn't really been done before?
Hmm.
And take this. Yeah, it's a musical instrument, but for me, it's like a vehicle. How can I take people to a different place? And create a synergy maybe with this vocalist. It's not just piano accompanying a singer, but together we can create some kind of energy that's new.
Yeah, and you did another big thing with the drop of love, drop of life. I'm sorry. Talk to me about that. Like what,
Yeah,
46 artists? What?
Yeah, because I'm signed with BMI, and BMI called me one day and said, "Look, there's this initiative here at City of Hope Hospital in Los Angeles. It's a children's hospital. Um, especially Latin kids that have cancer. There's a cancer ward. We want to raise awareness and for bone marrow and all that testing and all that stuff." And so I toured the hospital with a bunch of people, and it was just all these upbeat children. Just like I was amazed. So I went home and I wrote this song called La Gota de la Vida, the drop of life. How one little drop can change everything, and things can grow. And I wrote the song. I was at Universal at the time, and I played it for Jesus Lopez, the CEO. He loved it and said, "Okay, let's do. We can do like a We Are the World type of thing." And again, I just started calling everybody, Enrique, Marc Antonio Solis, Placido Domingo was on it. It was crazy, and we did it during Grammy week in Las Vegas too, so everyone was there.
Wow.
And so I'm like, dude, I'm recording this. I really want you to be on. Can you do it? I know the show's tomorrow. We're going to be here all day. The day before the Grammy, and everyone showed up. It was no one charged a penny. There was no egos involved. It was just for the kids. So
and then you guys all played together. Like, tell me about. I'm kind of confused on how 46 artists got together. Was it like you all would play, or was it all on the same song?
It was, the one song. We had the basic track done. The artists would come in and recording studio. They'd sing, did that part. Then immediately they'd go to the other room where we had the camera set up, and they would film.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we had it down, so it was like a
you had it going. You had a system there. What year was that?
It's like 2014, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you were still on Universal at that point, and then you signed to Sony, which you're on currently.
And I signed to Sony, Sony Music with Afo Verde, the CEO, was amazing.
Tell me about that moment.
That was I got asked to play in that Nassau Coliseum with a couple of other artists, which is really right before Christmas, and this is like 2015. And it was Ricky was there, Mark was not there, myself and a couple other artists. And mostly Sony artists, and I was like Universal. And so, but all the Sony, the executives were all there, and they heard my set, and then I got a knock on the door. It was crazy, and it was the CEO, Awful. Arthur, that was amazing. What are you doing? How's your contract? And we hit it off. There was great chemistry. He's a musician. Awful's amazing. He started as a guitar player producer, and one of the only people I think in the music business that and I was an executive.
Is actually like a player.
He actually plays. No,
right. Instead of just a suit.
Yeah, I mean, when you play a song for him, it's not like, well, I have to wait to have other people hear it before I have an opinion. So,
right. He knows right away.
You know what? Here, the bass needs to be a little bigger. You could cut the chorus a little bit. The bridge is a little too long. Like, wow.
That's amazing to have somebody like that to be able to like help you structure and help you kind of cut stuff up and edit the song, I'd imagine, right?
Oh yeah, it's great. I couldn't believe the first time I'm in his office and he just picks up a guitar. I knew he was good, and he just starts, well, how about this? It's like, okay.
Yeah, wow. And okay, and you've been with them for a while. I mean, since what, 2016-ish, and put out a record and some singles.
Yeah, put out a record. The first one's called Biagero, which means traveler. We had this big meeting, and they took into account, okay, who's this guy? This crazy Irish American guy.
Playing Latin music.
Yeah. So we came up with this idea of just going to like 9 different countries and filming everything, make a documentary, and then film in Mexico and Spain, Portugal, Italy. We went to Rio de Janeiro, Argentina, Colombia. And I just hang out, several days, however long it took, hang out with the best musicians there, and then, play like an iconic song, my version of it. And that actually became a documentary too.
Wow. And going into it, did you know they're going to film it as a documentary, or did it just kind of happen?
Okay. We filmed everything in advance. In Mexico, for example, Armando Manzanero was like the most famous Mexican composer ever. He was like 83 at the time. So I had the honor to go to his personal studio, to play with him, 4 hands on the same piano. And It was amazing. Italy, the same thing. You know, it was crazy.
Wow. And then come 2020, where were you at? Like, because I know you put a couple singles out in 2019, but 2020, were you getting ready to? Were you on the road writing music? Like, where were you when the virus happened and everybody got stuck inside?
When the virus hit the fan, when
Yeah.
yeah, I was about to start a new project. Yeah, the tour, we were going to go on the road again, and then everything, as you know, from one day to the next, like no airplanes, no concerts, no anything. And I was here with my piano in my studio, you know, thinking, okay, what are we going to do? So, like everyone else, you know. Then after a couple of weeks, I'm like, all right, I can sit here and cry in my beer or do something positive and turn this into something, you know, positive energy, you know?
Uh-huh.
And since I was a kid, I always wanted to do something like Piano and Woman, something like that. Because you know, starting playing, I did so many gigs in Detroit, for example. Like we were the house band, and a lot of times the people didn't have the budget for the whole band. So you know what? Don't worry, we'll send Arthur and his piano and the female vocalist. Arthur and the female vocalist. So it was like hundreds of gigs I did, just me and the
Female vocalist.
Exactly. Different repertoire from all over, and so it's a format I've always loved. So I thought, okay, now's a great time. You know, this pandemic. How about, you know, putting this project together? And Sony loved the idea.
And that's what you've worked on since the pandemic happened.
Yeah, so that started in like May. Wow, it was insane. You know, first of all, we knew, okay, it was greenlit. Let's say, okay, let's do it. Everyone had ideas of who to invite. And I was like, you know what? Let me call first my friends, you know, the people I know really well, where there's chemistry, and I call all five: Kany García from Puerto Rico, Natalia Jiménez from Spain, Goyo from Colombia, Evaluna Montaner, and Nella from Venezuela. And all five of them, like, you know, dude, Arthur, count on me. I'm in. Let's do it.
And so, did you write the songs out and send them how it would go, and then they sang it, and then what? Send it to you, like emailed it to you or whatever? Because I would imagine you can't get in the same room as these people.
Well, that was initially the idea. Because of the pandemic, they're like, all right, you do your pianos there, they'll do the vocals where they are, and that's it. But then I got together with my Motif, the producer, who's amazing. He's Marc Anthony's right-hand man. As a songwriter, producer, everything. He's a great friend. And we're like, you know, we can't do this. We're not going to handle this virtually. We got to be. So we ended up recording live everything. You know, we had the ideas for the songs, but all the behind the scenes is all there. We went in the studio. You know, it got tested every 3 days or whatever it was. And first we recorded everything live, did the album, and at the same time we had a lot of interest from HBO, and then they said they're all in. And you know, it became an HBO special that it came out a couple of months ago. Is now streaming on.
That is so cool. So was everybody together then? Like all the singers came and did it? Like you said, it was all recorded live, or was it like you guys would do a live session with one of the singers, and then, you know, Natalia would come in, and then you do another song, or like how did that work as far as recording the song?
We did them individually, you know.
Okay.
Because, you know, one of the benefits, I suppose, of the pandemic is like there wasn't any time constraints really, because studio, you know, it wasn't like before. Okay, 3 hours, you got a session. You know, it's like Nashville. Okay, maybe 4 hours, 2 to 6, you're out. The song's done, or at least the basic tracks are done. We had 3 days. So Goyo came from Colombia. We just hung out. You know, okay, try this, and we're really able to just, okay, you know about that. All right, you know, let's have lunch. Let's come back, and not just okay, the album's got to be out in 6 weeks. We want it, you know, for the second quarter. They want to do here's the marketing budget. We were able to really deep dive into just got all kinds of different ideas.
I would imagine that this album wouldn't have turned out the way it did if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, totally. I agree. It wouldn't have. I don't know. It's been insightful, whatever it is. You know, everyone's thinking deeply about with their family, their lives, or what's going on in the world, and it came out through the music. I really believe.
And is this something like, without having that pressure? Like, is this a way that you think that you'll continue to write records, or like, do you think you'll go back to more of the, you know, traditional sense of how you put an album together?
Well, that's so funny you say that, because I'm starting to do a new album with Sony, And they're like, all right, can we have it ready by November?
Oh. Okay. Well, I guess they chose for you.
I got another call this afternoon actually, but you know what? I'm thinking maybe first quarter would be better. Just, what's 3 months, when you can, turn over some other rocks and find different things. And wow, that never occurred to me before.
Right, right. Wow, you must be always writing. Are you constantly like just coming up with stuff to be able to put you just put this record out this year and then to have something like, yeah, I can get something done by November.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's like in 2 months, not even a month and a half.
I know. We'll see. Yeah, I write every day.
Okay.
In mornings, my classical time, my formation time. But then like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I don't know. Everyone has their creative periods. Or when's yours? Like, when do you feel most open? Like
Me personally?
Yeah.
Probably in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the morning, I got 2 kids. I got to get them off to school. And then it's by the time they're out of the house, it's like, okay, now I have like a couple minutes to decompress. Then I'll probably have an interview. So it's like, it just depends. I have to get up and mentally get ready. Like I have to be up for a few hours before my creative juices start going, or I'm able to communicate with people.
And I play in the morning. So like this one note, for example, in the morning will means to me like just something like that, Then in the afternoon, the same note means like. It's I don't know, everything changes.
Dude, you're so good. I'm so jealous of people that can play piano. I grew up my whole life with my sister and my dad could play. We had a piano in the house, and I just never took up lessons. And now I'm getting my kids into it because I'm like, this is my biggest regret. You will learn piano, and then I will learn off of what you're learning in your piano class. Like I can play guitar and I understand chords and music and everything, and I can play chords on piano, but I just don't understand. Like I wish I could just sit down and just tinker like how most people that can play piano can.
But being in Nashville, don't you think people like that? I went to Cuba to film with Arisha. We did a video a year and a half ago. It's such a musical place. It's like everyone's musical IQ seems higher. Like I think about like Nashville too. Don't you think like there's so much music around that's like impossible not to
embrace it and pick it up a little bit? No, totally. I mean, I'm originally from San Diego, from California. So we've moved out here about 6 months ago.
Oh wow.
So that's why I'm like really like, I mean, I had my kids in piano lessons prior to moving here, but now it's like I've got my older son in guitar lessons, and my younger son, he got a drum kit like in the beginning of COVID to kind of like get aggression out and like have something to, work out, so to speak.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of like grooming a little family band.
Right.
So yeah, but a piano is always something I think is such a beautiful instrument, and to hear you play like that, it blows my mind.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and so you got possibly another record coming out, or you obviously working on new music, and you just put out this other album. I wasn't really aware. I knew that you had a special on HBO, but tell me a little bit more about this.
It's called Piano Y Mujer, piano and woman.
Yeah.
It's doing really well. Thankfully, it was like a surprise for HBO. They had never done anything like this before.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of specials. It's usually one artist but this, we presented them with this concept. No, it's this, celebration of women in music and what's more important too, especially during COVID, the mothers of the families, putting them together, the grandmothers, your sisters, all the support system,
Mm-hmm.
So it came out like 3 or 4 months ago, and it's a 2-year. It's going to be on HBO for 2 years, so we're really happy, and it's also all over Latin America on the Sony channel too.
That is so cool. That is really cool. And it was filmed prior to HBO picking it up, right? So it was like something that you guys had put together, and then they were interested, or did they get involved right away?
They got involved. They were really interested. And once they heard the music, the tracks started coming in like around June, July. Then they went all in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so then we filmed it here in Miami in October. in October, COVID was like,
full force.
Yeah, I mean, so this hotel called the Faena Hotel. It's a beautiful hotel with a theater and like a 300 really elegant theater inside. So we took everything out of it and made it into a soundstage, the inside of the theater.
Wow.
But it was like October, and so I had 2 masks on. The hotel was closed, so they're like, just go for it. The owner said, this is HBO, it's a righteous project. We don't, just do it.
Use it, right?
And then I go in, and then Kany García just arrived from Puerto Rico. She's got like a mask on and a shield. And we're like looking at each other, but our eyes are like, what are we doing? This is like insane.
It's so weird. It's so insane.
Yeah, and there were 2 nurses, and everyone's getting tested. But then we started playing music. We obviously took the masks off, and it was like this release, this like euphoric energy, just musical energy that was really wonderful, actually.
That is so amazing. Have you had a chance to play yet? I mean, live as far as like in front of people since the COVID, like a year and a half later?
Yeah, I've done like a couple of award shows, big things like that. And the tour was Piano Y Mujer tour was supposed to start here in the States in November, but then the variant came around, so we pushed it back to first quarter next year. But we can't,
okay.
Everyone's down, the label's down. We have a great production company that's involved. So we're gonna start in LA, in New York, and Chicago, Puerto Rico, Miami, and a couple more cities too. But yeah, so we can't wait to be out playing again with streaming's one thing, but then you finish and it's like dead silent in your house. It's so weird.
Yeah, seeing comments and like emojis coming through, and you're like, this probably isn't the same.
Yeah, no, and then you finish live, as and people stand up and
crazy. Yeah, sure. Well, Arthur, man, thank you so much for doing this. This has been so great. I love that you have your piano right there with you, and you've been tinkering. It's just made this whole experience it's been great. I appreciate you.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, definitely. Like the word no does not exist. I was taught that by my mentor in New York, and you hear it so many times, music business, no. If someone says no, all that means is not right now. And it took me a long time. I was told that, but it's one thing, you're knocking on doors, you're giving demos, and then you hear no. But then once, you just have to reach you have to think, okay, it's not, it's just not right now. It's not, and that's exactly what happened with my career. 6 years of knocking on doors and nothing. And then finally the same people said, okay, now, I guess. Bringing it backward.